Obviously in humans we can't like we don't like it's very immoral, I guess, to try to like breed humans and then analyze them, right? Like that's kind of like that's pretty messed up. Like we wouldn't do that. Hopefully, I would hope people don't do that. But the most useful population of people would be identical twins. So identical twins and then fraternal twins. And just so everyone knows, identical twins means that the twins have an identical set of DNA. Like it's basically a perfect match.
Yeah.
Fraternal twins have a half identical set. So that means like they have the same DNA from one parent and different DNA from another parent. So like they both have the exact same DNA from dad, but maybe different DNA from mom. I'm not too sure of the science behind that. So if I switched the parents, I get confused. But that's
what it is.
Yeah, that's the important thing to know is just that identical twins, basically literally the exact same. Fraternal twins is like very close. It's a half set of identical DNA. So when we study identical twins, it gives us a lot of clues, because if identical twins are very, very similar, and they grew up in different places, well, like, that's kind of like a clue. We're like, well, if they grew up in two completely different places and they're very similar, that would suggest a strong role in genetics. If they grew up in two completely different places and they're literally like just, you get like, it's just like analyzing any other people, like they just seem like random people, like they have no correlation, then that would suggest more environment, right? And obviously it's like, it's not really going to be like one or the other. It's kind of like a spectrum. But let's kind of get into it. So they did I got this from Steven Pinker. He has a great TED Talk on this. But they did brain scans of people. So they did a study of brain scans. And basically what they did is they analyzed how similar gray matter was between random people versus identical twins versus fraternal twins.
What is, I hear a lot about this gray matter. What is gray? It's such a weird thing. Like I never get a definition of it. Is it just
I've never actually like really dived into what it is, because the brain is so complicated. But just know
the
that
human body is just so complicated. Like when you said like we get more confused by learning about genetics, I'm like, that don't make no sense. That's like studying for an exam and being like, I just got more confused. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like space or like the ocean. Like the more we learn about how big, like how large the ocean is, we're like, wow, like there's a lot we don't know. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. But talking about the brain scans, or the gray matter. Just know that the way they did it, like the areas, you can actually analyze gray matter in the brain in terms of its structure. And so structural similarities in the brain would point to genetic similarities in people, because your brain obviously controls your personality, how you think, etc.
Exactly.
So it's not a perfect match, it's not like but it gives it a lot of clues. And what they found was between random people, there was no correlation at all between structures of like there's no significant statistical correlation and like them being similar. So the gray matters between random people was different, like very clearly different. When they studied fraternal twins, they found that it was quite similar, like a decent, like very. It would be helpful. We'll throw up a visual on the screen for those watching on YouTube of like the brain scans, but just know that for fraternal twins it was very similar, and for identical twins it was unbelievably similar. The structural similarities in gray matter was just very, very similar.
And that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. They're identical.
You're like genetics, okay, like
identical.
They're identical. Like, okay, well, like that makes sense. Yeah.
I swear, scientists be coming to conclusions. You just like, bro, I could have told you that without even you researching.
True, but it is important that like we have like hard data,
evidence,
right?
That's science for y'all.
Exactly. And also when doing case studies, a case study is just like a focus on like one for genetics in this field. That would be like focusing on two twins. So just a case study was focusing on those two, not like a massive study, just like literally just those two people and really analyzing them. So when they do case studies on identical twins, every set of identical twins ever studied, they are they have very like similar tendencies, and specifically those that have been separated at birth and grew up in different places, they have very strong similar tendencies. So I'm going to give you a few.
Let me give. I actually I didn't hit too much when I was researching on personality. I focused more on like the environment, but on the genetics, and when I watched the video, and it was saying like there was these two this is a real life example. There was these two dudes, identical twins, and they had been separated at birth, and they didn't even know about each other until they were like in their 60s or something.
Really?
The two dudes had like they married twice. They married and divorced. They married twice. Both of their wives had the same name. They were driving the same car and like things like that. But they're like, of course, there's some differences in their jobs, their hairstyles, but like just like even down to the name of your wife and how many times you remarried. Like
that's a crazy. Like, what are the odds? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what are the odds? And I'm actually gonna give you this example is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so these two guys, they're two guys. One he grew up in Germany. He was raised Catholic in Germany, and the other was raised Jewish in Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I don't know where Trinidad is, but
Trinidad is somewhere in New York, I think.
Okay, well, he was raised Jewish in Trinidad. They were separated at birth and then adopted by families, and then they met later. So and they were used they were studied.
Yeah.
And when the first time they ever walk into a room, they're wearing the same thing. Literally the exact same blue
they
shirt.
didn't know about.
Had no idea.
Yeah.
The exact same blue shirt. And you're like, okay, well,
Okay.
it happens, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you some things that they both did. That is they're very special things. Okay, they both dip buttered toast in their coffee. Okay, this is very
Both dip buttered
toast in their coffee. Okay,
strange.
They both kept rubber bands around their wrist.
Okay.
Okay, they both flushed the toilet before and after going to the restroom. Okay, that's kind of like a weird idiosyncrasy.
My thing is like, bro, how invasive were they during these case studies? Jesus, they're like, yo, use the bathroom. Let me see what you're doing. But keep going on.
And then the last thing is they both liked to surprise people by sneezing in elevators. They both thought that was like a funny thing. They both liked that. Okay, that's such a weird thing.
That's actually so weird. I'm actually laughing.
But like you see, like those are okay. So, and that's just one example. That's a pretty strong example. But it just gives you an idea of like he was raised Catholic Catholic German versus Jewish in Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those are very different cultures, different people, everything's different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole environment is different. Yet somehow they both ended up with these random traits. These very strange idiosyncrasies.
Wait, time out. I want to apologize because I had a feeling I was gonna get flamed. Trinidad is not in New York. I think people from Trinidad go to New York. That's why I said it. But Trinidad is its own. It's a Caribbean chain. It's somewhere in South America.
Yeah, it's in South America.
So sorry for those Trinidadians, and I might have offended. But keep going.
The thing about that, Trinidad is in South America. Raised Jewish in South America, Catholic in Germany. Very different places, different societies, different cultures, different friends, different people, different schooling systems, different everything.
Yeah,
right?
Very different.
And they still have these random idiosyncrasies. That's so random, right? Like that's crazy.
And for the people that don't know what idiosyncrasies is, because English is not my strong suit. What does that mean?
Idiosyncrasies are just like odd things that like are very unique to you. So,
okay.
They're just there are very certain things, characteristics that you associate with one person.
Yeah. There you go. Add that to your vocabulary. Idiosyncrasy.
And then so the last I want to give you some data. This comes from an open source textbook for Introduction to Psychology, and they give some data based on how similar, the correlation between identical twins from genetics and from the environment. So I'm just going to throw out some numbers and based on this data, and just know that the study of identical twins is very difficult because it's hard to separate one's environment. Like you can't give everyone the exact same environment because they're inherently going to have different associations with people. Different. You just can't control.
Even as twins, they have their own lives.
They do have their own lives. So even if they're raised in the same family, it's not a perfect thing. So this data, take it more as like a ballpark range instead of like this is fact, because it's a very hard thing to control for.
Yeah.
But I'll just throw some numbers out. So the correlation between the heritability percentage between fingerprints of identical twins is 100%. Okay? That makes sense. It's a physical trait. The correlation between identical twins raised apart in terms of their aggression is 46%, which means that like 46% of their aggressive tendencies came from genetics, from the study.
Yeah.
That's a pretty large percentage, right?
Yeah.
What'd you say earlier? 10 to 20%?
Yeah, something like
so
that.
it's like, to me, that's kind of like, wow, like that's actually
that's pretty significant.
That's pretty significant, right?
Number.
The likelihood of divorce between identical twins was found to be about 52%. Your sexual orientation, 52%. In comparison, fraternal twins was 22% for both. Okay, so the difference there is important,
There's
right?
a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so we see in identical twins, it's 52%, and then in fraternal twins, 22%.
So it's highlighting the fact that, like, the closer you are in genetics, like, the more likely you're going to have the same kind of, you know.
Yeah, they're going to have, in this case,
same sexual orientation.
And same the likelihood of divorce, as you mentioned earlier. They divorced, remarried twice. Like, the same likelihoods there. That's a very significant thing. Like, that's crazy.
And this is, and to like highlight to the people listening, like, they're what, separate, right? These are not.
So in this case, so those were actually raised together.
Okay.
So the aggression twins, they were raised apart.
Okay.
But the twins that I just cited, those were raised together.
Okay.
But even with that from the study, this is from genetics, like the correlation.
Okay. These are all they did it genetically.
Yeah, this is like So this is like estimated